a good beat. Why aren't you dancing?
Dancing is forbidden. 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 Dancing is forbidden.
Yoo-hoo, running crew, welcome to Dancing is Forbidden. I am Ronnie, lifelong fan of and one-time voice on Aqua Teen Hunger Force. And on this podcast, we are watching through and talking about every Aqua Teen episode. And the episode we are watching through and talking about this week is Season 5, Episode 2, Sirens.
I am Chrysanthemum. This is the BJ Queen. This is John Kruk.
What's up, man?
Kruk from the Phillies?
Sirens making its Adult Swim debut on January 27th, 2008. In this episode, a trio of sirens move into the Aqua Teen's house, and Carl's attention is piqued when he hears them singing their song. This is our second episode in our trilogy of Carl-based episodes here, opening up the season to many complaints, as we discussed in Robots Everywhere. And this episode, no exception, but I grew to really like Robots Everywhere, covering it in the last podcast. Am I going to grow to like Sirens? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Like I mentioned in Robots Everywhere, I saw this episode when it came on TV in 2008. And I didn't like it, and it made me kind of not care about watching Aqua Teen anymore because of that. So I already have a lot of negative feelings about this one going into it, but despite that, I'm still excited to go through it, pay some attention to it, and hopefully come around to it. We have an exclusive clip here from Dave Willis I'll play for you later. He talks a little bit about getting the voice actors on this one, our guest stars. Of course, again, we'll get into that as we go on, but before that, we got some other stuff to talk about first. Really don't have any Aqua Teen news for you, although I do want to let you know that Matt Malero, he is still chugging along on a YouTube channel. He's uploading stuff constantly. And he recently put up a video called Meat Kingdom. Good name, right? He put up a video called Meat Kingdom with Aqua Teen producer and editor John Breston on that one. So go check that one out. We were talking a bit about John Breston in Robots Everywhere. So it's fun to see all these years later, those guys still getting together to make some stuff. Even if it's just for Matt Malero's YouTube channel. Check it out. Link to that in the description. To the podcast news here. I was recently back on one of my favorite podcasts ever, Roach Coach. That is a podcast that inspired me to start this podcast. I love those guys so much, and they invited me back on. We had a great time talking about Wayne Static's solo album, Pig Hammer. Roach Coach being a music podcast, but both of the guys do improv, so they're very, very, very funny. Let me play a little clip of it. Now, right, Wayne, I came to you to get my hot chick fully transformed into a fucking pig.
Right?
This is what you give me? Just the fucking snout? My insurance isn't going to pay for just the snout. This was for the full transformation, Wayne.
I got approved for a full pig.
Full pig. Can I get a little belly? Little belly? Huh?
At least a little pig belly,
little
please,
belly?
Wayne.
All right.
All right, this is Ronnie coming back in. What the hell are we talking about here? Go listen and find out. You can find them at roachcoach.com or just type in Roach Coach wherever you're listening to this. It is actually, believe it or not, episode 420. Oh, yeah, that we did. I didn't know that ahead of time, so I would have just harped on that the whole time. Probably a good thing. Always an honor to be on Roach Coach. Always a fun time. But you know what else is a fun time? Learning about the pop culture that happened the very week that these episodes of Aqua Teen came out. Let's see what was going on when Sirens debuted. Spoofing and goofing its way to the top of the box office this week, we have Meet the Spartans pulling in $18.5 million. Meet the Spartans being a spoof film. This film mainly spoofing 300, which came out at the beginning of 2007, a year previous. But they're spoofing all sorts of other stuff too, and making an assload of references to the pop culture of the time. Now look, this film is not regarded critically well at all. I just watched the trailer. It looked so fucking dumb. I didn't see this at the time. I didn't really see many of these spoof films. They just didn't interest me. But the cool thing about these movies is they really are like a time capsule for this period, because watching that trailer, it was like any sort of big moment in pop culture was relayed in that trailer, and they're just kind of playing around with it. And who is they, you ask? Who made these spoof films? It was actually written, most of them, by a pair of writers named Jason Friedberg and Aaron Seltzer. And they made, of course, Meet the Spartans, but a ton of other spoof movies, such as Disaster Movie, Vampires Suck, The Starving Games, Epic Movie, Date Movie. Okay, you get the idea. All those parody movies from that time were basically written by these guys, and also one that I really love. These guys wrote on the first Scary Movie. Now, it wasn't just them, like most of these other movies I listed to you. Scary Movie, of course, also written by the Wayans brothers, who are these comedic geniuses, which I think is why Scary Movie is actually good and received well critically. These movies after Scary Movie, and I should say, Aaron and Jason only wrote on the first Scary Movie, not the other ones. The Aaron and Jason ones here are not received well critically. They did pretty well in the box office, especially considering their low budgets. But yeah, these movies just got hated on, and I understand why. To me, with Scary Movie, which kind of kicked off these films, there's something inherently just funny about making like a comedy out of a horror, right? Aqua Teen does it all the time. Matt and Dave are always playing around with horror elements and making them funny. And that's, of course, not to say that Matt and Dave on Aqua Teen and the Scary Movie films are the only things to do that. But it's just like ripe for comedy, right? It's such an easy premise and a smart premise, I think. My problem with a lot of these spoof films is they were spoofing things that were already funny. And to spoof it, they just made it dumb. And I don't know, to me, it was just really low-hanging fruit and not really anything I'm interested in. Now, having said that, like, if you watched these at the time and you liked it, hey, fair enough. I hope there's not one guy sitting here like, hey, man, I love those movies, fuck you. I'm not trying to, I'm just speaking from my perspective here, okay? And also from the perspective of all the reviews I read about these movies. But there is a big differentiating factor here between the Scary Movies and these other spoof films, where to me, the Scary Movies had some integrity to them. They had a very strong, cast and crews and writers and things like that. They had, like I mentioned, the Wayans brothers in the Scary Movies, but they had some great actors like David Cross, who you might know as Happy Time Harry.
Let's go swimming, that might cheer you up.
Oh, yeah, swimming sounds like a really fun idea. Why don't you go swimming? I gotta take a nap, all right? Get me up at midnight, because I gotta go to work.
Chris Elliott, Anna Faris, lots of great people. And some of these other spoof films had some actors too, like I know Carmen Electra was in a lot of these. But otherwise, like, as these guys' career went on, they had less and less, like, known actors, to the point to where their last film was called Super Fast, which spoofs Fast and the Furious, came out in 2015, and that's the last film I think that these guys have done, especially, like, spoof ones. And even then, Super Fast was direct to DVD. It didn't make that much money. I think this whole spoof genre really ran its course. I mean, not just I think. I mean, we could see it did, because they don't make these kinds of movies anymore. But I think a big reason for that, besides the fact that a lot of these were not that good, is the rise of the internet. So let's talk about Twilight, okay? That comes out actually this year in our Aqua Teen timeline, although we won't get to it. But I like the Twilight movies, all right? Now, to quote my friend Rob Couch, they're not good, but they're a good time, okay? I think that they're kind of campy, so they're kind of like lame, but I don't know. Like, the story is enough to keep you interested, but then there's a bunch of weirdness to it that I like it in a similar way to how I like The Room. So I watched Vampires Suck here. I started watching it at least, and I turned it off. I'm like, this is just dumb. They're just like throwing these really stupid, immature jokes in. They're not really spoofing it in an interesting way. But if I go to the internet, there's a whole treasure trove of Twilight spoofs on there that are actually genuinely really funny, because the people making them are real fans of the thing. And I think real fans of something are the best people to spoof something. As opposed to Jason and Aaron here, they're just capitalizing on like a very profitable moment in pop culture. That's all they're really doing with these. That's not to say they don't like the things that they're spoofing, but given the choice between some people trying to make a quick buck and then some people making a spoof because they genuinely like the thing and have clever ways to fuck around with it, I'd rather pick the latter. So I think that's a part of the reason why these movies lost their appeal, is because if you like something enough to want to see a spoof of it, you would just go online and watch a YouTube video and be done. You're not going to want to sit through an hour-and-a-half movie that, the people writing it's just financially motivated. So, hey, here's a little spiel about Meet the Spartans. I assume this name inspired from Meet the Parents, mixed with a 300 reference. It's got a 2.8 out of 10 on IMDb. That kind of tells you all you need to know. And there's no shared cast or crew here between Meet the Spartans and Aqua Teen Hunger Force. So, to jump over to some television news, I do want to mention that the writer's strike that stretched between late 2007 and early 2008 is still ongoing here. And this very much affected my second favorite show ever, my favorite show behind Aqua Teen, Breaking Bad. To talk about Breaking Bad for a hot second, the show actually debuted the previous week alongside Robots Everywhere. So now here with Sirens, Breaking Bad is putting out its second episode. And because of the writer's strike, that first season of Breaking Bad actually got cut short, which was a blessing in disguise because the original plans for Breaking Bad were actually pretty different from what we ended up getting. Most notably, Jesse, one of the main characters, was supposed to die in the first season, and I think Walt Jr. was supposed to die too. And because the season got cut short and they had to end it early, they didn't get to kill him off in a satisfactory way. Well, then that first season came out, and the fan reaction was so strong to Jesse, plus, that gave them more time to really evaluate Aaron Paul, that, of course, we know now they kept Jesse on as a character throughout the entirety of the show. So if it wasn't for this writer's strike that's going on at this moment in time in our Aqua Teen timeline, Breaking Bad probably wouldn't have been as good as it was, which is kind of wild. I don't really remember hearing about Breaking Bad in 2008. I really remember hearing about it towards the end of its run more. So, I mean, who knows? If that didn't happen, they could have killed off Jesse. Show could have not been as good. Who knows? But that's what's happening here in our film and television, January 27th, 2008. What's happening on the airwaves? Let me hear our top album.
But all I know is everything's gonna be alright. And no one can get in the way of what I'm feeling. No one can get in the way of what I feel for you.
Oh my god, that's Alicia Keys. She's singing for me. That song's about me. That song is No One off of her album As I Am, our top album this week, selling over 70,000 copies. Alicia, you shouldn't have. You shouldn't have written that sweet song about me, but god damn it, do I appreciate it. I believe the working title on that was actually No One, parentheses, Ronnie is the best ever. Now, I don't know where I read that, but I swear I did read it somewhere. It might have been in the Bible, I'm not sure. This record here, I think before we can talk about this, we need to remember that we talked about Alicia back in the 2003 season of Aqua Teen, and at that point in time, she was huge. She was one of the biggest stars around. And here, 4 years later, 5 years later, that's not really the case anymore. This album, I mean, look, it's our top album this week, but it does not do as well as The Diary of Alicia Keys, which had so many great hits on it. This album going in more of a pop direction, I want to say, than The Diary of Alicia Keys, which was more rooted in R&B. And I know Alicia got some criticism for her lyrics on this one. They just weren't as interesting as her previous lyrical work. Digging through this album a little bit and then comparing it to The Diary of Alicia Keys, I just liked the vibe on her earlier stuff a lot more than on this one. It feels a lot more of its time, a little less of a classic sound to it like her earlier work would have. And the reviews on this one really echo that. This wasn't considered one of her best albums or anything like that. But I mean, hey, it's Alicia Keys. You know her voice sounds great. And when she's singing a song about me, I can't be too mad about it. So that's our top album this week, As I Am by Alicia Keys. I want to shout out an album coming out physically this week on the 22nd, so about 5 days before this episode of Aqua Teen debuts. we have MGMT putting their album Oracular Spectacular out on CD, and probably other formats. But I did end up buying that CD about a year later, I think. It's got great songs on it like Time to Pretend, Kids, Electric Feel, some classics, some great songs on there, and I want to bring that up because we have MGMT here doing their thing. In 2 days here, we have Vampire Weekend coming out with their debut album. There's like a bit of a resurgence of indie going on here with these different groups that then goes on to influence a lot of stuff that comes out just a few years later that I was really into in high school. So the seeds of this kind of indie / synth poppy kind of movement are being planted here in the late aughts, and we'll be reaping and sowing them rewards later. So a little bit of album talk for us. Let me get a listen though. What's our top single this week? Oh, holy shit. Forget about getting high, because right now, baby, we're getting low. Our top track this week on the Billboard charts is Low by Flo Rida featuring T-Pain. Gotta mention here, our man T-Pain, very on topic for us here at Dancing is Forbidden, because we'll be seeing him later on this season and in a future episode of Aqua Teen. So T-Pain, a part of the Aqua Teen family, and goddammit, he's bringing it here on Low with his buddy Flo Rida. Now, this one, I say without any reservations, is a classic, gotten down to it at many a party, many a dance, and I don't know what rumors you've been hearing that, Ronnie, because he does an Aqua Teen podcast, he can't get low. Yeah, don't believe that bullshit. That's not true. When I get low, I'm getting as low as I can go, all right? I'm talking balls to the floor low. Between you and me, I don't know how I did it, but one time, I swear to God, my balls went through the floor. I don't know how I pulled that off, but no one gets lower than I do, and the day that I can't is probably the day that I'm done in this world. I'm going out on a... the day I can't get low to low, that's the day I'm hitting the road. I'm fucking offing myself quick, all right? I'm making that promise right here. A world in which I can't get low to low, that's not a world I want to be in. And as your faithful podcast host, I'm hoping that you'll follow me in this decision. You know, scrolling through Netflix one day, I saw something about a TikTok death cult. So now my main goal in life is really to get an Aqua Teen podcast death cult going. So I assume you're on board with this. Look, I love Low, but I hate to say it, I don't know what this is about, right? It's very cryptic lyrically. I didn't know what this meant for a long time, but don't worry, because over on Wikipedia, they explain to us what this song is about in case you had any questions like I do. So Wikipedia says, thematically, the song describes a sexually desirable girl twerking in a club and the singer's effort to hook up with her, primarily by flaunting displays of cash. The girl is described in the chorus as wearing apple-bottom jeans and boots with the fur. Well, thank you, Wikipedia. Now I know. The link for twerking is blue. I don't know what that means. Should I click on that? I'll save that for later. I'll figure out what twerking means some other time. But look, Low, it's a classic. If you ever see me in public, put it on. Balls to the floor in less than 1 second. That's my guarantee to you. We're going to save our top alternative track for next week because, as I said in Robots Everywhere, we got the same singles here for a while. We can sit on these a little bit like I sit on my balls when I dance to Low. So, moving on here, we got some video games to talk about, and there's really nothing blowing my hair back this week coming out. Again, we're not that far removed from Christmas when all the good games came out before that, but there is one game that I thought was pretty interesting. We have a game here called Pirates of the Burning Sea coming out on the 22nd of January, and this is an MMORPG. You could be a pirate, you could be a Spaniard, you could be a guy from France, you could even be a British person in this game, all right? plenty of options, or you could be a pirate. I don't know. To me, it sounds more interesting to be a Spaniard, but maybe you want to be a pirate. But this game coming out here, and yeah, it's an MMORPG, so you're playing online with other people. This game actually looks kind of in-depth. Like, there's a player-driven economy, you run around as a little pirate or whatever other faction you choose, but you also can, like, build a ship, and then you could take your ship out on the open waters and get in, like, ship battles and stuff like that. And I love looking into these smaller, kind of obscure MMORPGs, because the reason that these exist is because there are people playing them. And I'm here to report, in 2024, this game is still going. There are still people playing this. I saw a Reddit post from a few months ago. They're trying to recruit people to join these servers, because it's like, look, we'll help you out. We're looking for more players for these games. And this game initially was published by Sony Online Entertainment, and 4 years later, in December of 2012, Sony announced that they were dropping the game. They were done publishing it because it didn't really have a very big player base, I'm guessing. But former developers of the game, they went on to form a company so that they themselves could host it. So people who helped develop this game then took it into their own hands, and they held on to it for about 6 years before they ceased operations. The company kind of fell apart. But then the game was bought by Vision Online Games, who have been hosting it for the last 5 years. So this is still going because there are still people playing it, and it's still getting developed too. They're still adding stuff to the game. So I watched some footage of it. The game graphically isn't anything to be excited about, but a lot of, again, the systems within the game sound interesting. You can take over towns, and because it's an MMORPG, like, other people playing the game could see that you took over that town. There's PvP, there's all sorts of stuff, PvE, all sorts of stuff going on. So look, if you like to be a little pirate, or if you're like me and want to be a Spaniard, Pirates of the Burning Sea, you could still play it. It's free to play now. When it came out, there was a subscription, but now it's free to play. Give it a shot, run around, have a good time in it. So alright, it is January 27th, 2008, and you love paying for stuff, you love buying stuff. You just saw Meet the Spartans because you want to pay to see all the pop culture references that you already knew about ahead of time. You then turn around and you pay for MGMT's Oracular Spectacular on CD, even though you could already listen to it online. And you know you're paying that monthly subscription on Pirates of the Burning Sea. And you better believe you're not playing as a pirate, okay? You're playing as one of the British people, and you're running around yelling at pirates because you don't like piracy. You like paying for things. You're a big spender. In fact, some might say that Low was written about you because you're just pulling out wads of cash to impress the twerking women at the club. Well, you know what? You best believe you're paying for that cable subscription, and that includes Adult Swim. You're gonna watch it, because even though you love spending money, you love paying for stuff, you gotta get your money's worth, of course. You like to consume the thing that you're paying for, and tonight, I'll tell you what you're consuming. First of all, at 10 p.m., we have American Dad with Meter Maid, new to Adult Swim, but not a new episode. After that, we have two Family Guys. We have an older episode, Damn It, Janet, and a newer episode with Mick Stroke. And Mick Stroke, Peter, hey, he has a stroke, and it's pretty funny, because the side of his face, they draw it really funny. It'll make you chuckle. After that, Robot Chicken with More Blood, More Chocolate, not a new episode. 11:45 p.m., we have Aqua Teen Hunger Force with Sirens. That's what I'm talking about. 12 a.m., midnight, we got Squidbillies with Beast Implants. Let me just say, I like the Squidbillies titles, okay? Last week here, it was Webnex. Now it's Beast Implants. A lot of fun here. I guess mirroring the medical nature of that Family Guy episode, in Beast Implants, after Granny's skin is burnt off, Granny, of course, played by Dana Snyder, voice of Master Shake, she has her body parts replaced with different animals, which causes her to act like them. Oh, Lord. Okay, so after that, 12:15 a.m., Tim and Eric Awesome Show, great job with Embarrassed. In Embarrassed, we have Dr. Steve Brule. He's teaching us all about some sweet berry wine. Give me some of that. That is a new episode. 12:30 a.m., we have the Venture Bros with Past Tense. 1 a.m., we're back with that Dark Place show, The Apes of Wrath. Funny title there. I have not watched Dark Place yet, but I will at some point. I'll watch it and report back. Lastly, we have Home Movies with Law and Borders. This being Season 1, Episode 12 of Home Movies, a classic episode. And that Home Movies episode coming on, like the previous podcast episode, basically the entire lineup goes through again, and then that Home Movies comes on afterwards at 5 a.m. So that's our lineup this week, same as it was in Robots Everywhere. We have American Dad, Two Family Guys, Robot Chicken, Aqua Teen, Squidbillies, Tim and Eric, Venture Bros, Dark Place, and Home Movies. Our only new episodes being from Aqua Teen, Squidbillies, and Tim and Eric. But hey, we're not here to talk about just any new episode. We're here to talk about the new Aqua Teen episode. Let's go do it.
Check it out. Check it out, y'all. Check it out.
Dancing is Forbidden is supported and enabled by the Moonmasters over at patreon.com/dancingisforbidden, chipping in $1, $5, $10, sometimes even more every single month so that I can keep making this show. All right, has everyone tuned out? All right, I'm all by myself here. I know everyone skipped past this. I can say whatever I want. Say whatever crazy shit I want to. All right, so I'm going to tell you about this race war I've been planning. Fuck, you're still here. No, that was a joke. I'm not doing that race war thing. Yeah, so supporting the podcast so I can keep on keeping on, baby. Keep on trucking. And you know who wants me to keep on trucking harder than anybody? We have Garrick, who signed on to the Patreon back on Christmas Eve 2023. And I remember... What do you mean explain that race war thing? No, I didn't say race war. I said bass war. Like the bass guitar? I'm trying to do a competition. That's what I'm talking about, all right? Let me get back to Garrick here, because I swear to God I said bass war, $100 top prize, and a new pair of strings. So Garrick signing up back on Christmas Eve, and I bitched about this on the podcast then, and I'll bitch about it again, because where I work the night shift at Target, all right? And they're like, oh, you get Christmas off. But here's the thing when you work night shift. They expect you to come in Christmas Eve night, clock out at 11:59 p.m. before the 25th, and then clock back in at 12:01 on the 26th, right? So you get literally the 24 hours of Christmas off, and that's it. That's not enough time to go see your family. That's not enough time to do nothing. But you know what it is enough time to? Because I was at work all pissed off at this time. Well, I did have enough time to see this email from Garrick pull through saying that he signed up to the Patreon at the $10 a month tier. Garrick, you made my Christmas. You let me know that someone cared about me. My man Garrick, I think I'm right about this. I think Garrick was born same year as I was. 1993, baby. Me and Garrick, we're rocking it in 8th grade at this point in time. And you might know Garrick for his work over at the Facebook Aqua Teen fan pages, because I've seen that motherfucker posting hardcore over there, doing it as hard as he can. Garrick, thank you so much. And when that base war comes around, you'll be spared.
Coming up next, Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Sirens making its Adult Swim television debut on January 27th, 2008. This episode being a direct follow-up to Robots Everywhere. In that episode, we had Carl trying to sell the Aqua Teen's house. We meet a new character named Markula, who is the owner of the house. Even though, again, I talked in that episode, I wasn't really clear on the fact that there is a for sale sign that they say they're trying to sell it, but then it seems like Markula would still retain ownership, so in a way he would just be renting it. Not really clear, but there are some direct continuations from that into here. Now, the robots are gone. We don't have those villains here. We have a new set of villains, quote unquote, of course. We have Neko Case as Chrysanthemum. We have Kelly Hogan as the BJ Queen, and John Kruk as himself. So, as usual, we will get to these actors as they show up in the episode. But I started with the villains here first. We do have Dave Willis in this one as Carl, but we don't have any of the Aqua Teens here. At least in Robots Everywhere, we had a brief voice message from Master Shake and Frylock, so Dana Snyder and Carrie Means. But they're not on this episode. There is no Aqua Teens here whatsoever. But we do have Matt Malero reprising his role as Markula here. So that is our cast on this one. Way different than any other Aqua Teen episode, because in all the previous Carl-centric episodes, we at least had the Aqua Teens in it, save for Meatwad in the last one. We at least had a glimpse of them in Robots Everywhere, but not the case here. This is purely a Carl-centric episode. Our editor here, it is Mr. Ned Hastings. This is a solo joint. He's doing it on his own. Ned's cutting this one up. Let's jump into it. So we have our intro, and I do want to say, because I talked in the last episode how this intro is pixelated, it's stretched out to fit a widescreen format, since Aqua Teen is widescreen now. But the outro is actually, like, rescanned or something. The outro to the show is crisp, looks great in 1080p, those moving images at the end, but the intro here, I guess they didn't have the assets to do that. So the intro, again, is pixelated, stretched out, and then once the episode starts, then it's looking good after that. We open the same exact way, really, that we do in Robots Everywhere, and that we have an exterior shot of the Aqua Teen's house, and we see this for sale sign outside. So I described the sign in Robots Everywhere. Here's a little Ronnie Neely Aqua Teen improvement note. Matt and Dave, I know you're listening to this. I know you listen to every one of these episodes. It would have been funny to me if the sign had some sort of addition to it. So, for example, if they had slapped another reduced sticker over it or something like that, just to really show that some time has passed and they're trying to sell the house. The sign is the exact same visually as we saw in Robots Everywhere. And then we go inside, and Carl, again, is giving a spiel on selling the house, but this time it's to Markula. Markula is there, the guy who owns the house, the landlord, and it seems like him and Carl are trying to work together on this.
So, very roomy. Put your flat screen TV over there. Step over the corpses there. The city been notified about that. But the flies have caught it off most of the meat anyways. You drop a throw on it, you're good to go. Man, I'm really focusing a lot on them corpses. So what do you say? We got a deal here?
You skipped over the wooden paneling. Talk more about the wooden paneling.
Is that a feature?
It is the best feature.
All right, yeah, sure.
I love it. We have some continuity here, because you heard Carl talking about these corpses. Those are the exact corpse, I guess, puddles from Robots Everywhere. When Divya and Vishal Roni were killed by the robots, those are still there, like those body parts. Now, interestingly, like, the house is fixed otherwise, because, I mean, if we want to get down to it, the house was burned down in that episode. Carl burnt it down. But the house is back. There's no robot oil anywhere. So the house is otherwise fixed, except for this pile of corpses here. So I love this kind of arbitrary continuity that they are doing here. And yeah, you heard Carl trying to give a spiel. He's trying to show the house. Markula seems okay with him trying to sell it, but Carl can't get over the fact that we have the corpses on the ground. He does not like that. You figured he'd be kind of desensitized to this sort of stuff at this point, but not the case, as we can see here. But Markula doesn't like the way that Carl is not acknowledging the wooden paneling enough. And speaking of wooden paneling, I have a continuation of a story I told you back in Robots Everywhere. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, first of all, this is a weird fucking episode to jump in on, since this is one of the few episodes of Aqua Teen with continuity. Go back and start with Robots Everywhere. But I want to get into this story because in Robots Everywhere, I told you about how one summer there was a murderer living next door illegally. He was camping out, okay? Squatters' rights, man. He was squatting after killing some old lady in the house next door to us. We eventually moved into that house. But when I was telling you that story, I tried to find some articles about that incident just to know more about it and tell you more about it. I couldn't find anything, but with typing my old address in, I came to find out that both of those houses that I lived in have since been sold. And not only were they sold, but they were both updated a lot and looked very different from how they did when we lived in them, when they were a lot more run down, really just stuck in the 70s or 80s when they were last renovated. And it was a bit of a shock to me to see the first house I lived in, because again, that was from when I was born till I was 15. We moved out, and I'm 30 now, so that was half my life has gone by at this point, and I have not seen the inside of that house outside of maybe old pictures or something like that. And it's a really weird experience to see, like, this place that was locked in your mind as looking a certain way, now looking very different. Still a little the same. It's still very small. It's still not the nicest spot, but it looks a lot nicer than when we lived there. In a way, it almost feels like a trick that's being played on the new person who buys it. Like, all right, that might be what it looks like now, but I know what it really looked like all the way back then. I know what it looked like for most of its history, right? There's new paint, new carpet, new appliances. Everything had been changed, except for when I looked upstairs, all right? This was my bedroom, well, my sister and my bedroom. It was basically like a giant attic, but it was a finished attic. And my bedroom was at the very end. And looking at these pictures, a little disorienting because of how much is new. But up here in the attic, in the bedroom, there's a sight for sore eyes, a familiar friend, something that was not changed, the wooden paneling. That's right. With the passage of time, how much has changed in general in the last 15 years, like how much of even my own family life has changed and everything with my mom passing away a couple years ago and just my life being so different now to when it was then when I was living in that house, watching this episode of Aqua Teen for the very first time in that house. The one constant here is that wood paneling. So I think Markula's onto something here. Talk more about the wood paneling. It is the best feature. So moving on with our Aqua Teen episode, Carl is going to bring us into the Aqua Teen's living room, which he has totally redecorated with tons of sports memorabilia. There's so much here. I'll talk to you more about it on the other side of the clip. But funny enough is, even though Carl decorated the house here with all this sports stuff, there is still that pipe in the kitchen that is pumping gas into the house the entire time. So we have that going on. Carl, he's going to show off his upgrade.
But check this out! Yeah, football fan! You're at the 50-yard line! Because you ain't just watching the game, you in the game! I mean, not really. You're watching the game, but sort of like you are in action, even though, you might be passed out.
I don't like how you try to sell my house.
Come on, man! This is a sport lover's fantasy!
I don't like sports. No one does.
All right, look, let's be frank here. That gas leak is gonna kill anybody that tries to move in
I'm not
here.
fixing that gas leak
All right,
for
no,
you
all
or
right,
anyone.
fine. I understand, But are you totally set on that price? I mean, $20,000 a month, man.
I need that money. Cost of blood is going up. I need to feed.
Yeah, you keep throwing around words like blood and feed. I mean, feed what?
Never you mind. I've said too much already. I'm so stupid.
I mean, maybe paint a mural. Or like the 91 Giants. Like cresting a hill.
Carl, I'm starting to think you aren't right for this job. This is not a fit.
Really? Well, then fit this. You need me, I'm next door. Getting comfortable with myself. In the nude.
Carl, he's heading next door to get comfortable with himself in the nude. Hey, what better way to get comfortable with yourself? Markula not really buying the way that Carl's trying to sell this house, but then again, they reveal that it's supposed to be $20,000 a month, so it sounds like it is a renting situation here. I love Markula talking about how nobody cares about sports. As we learned in my most recent interview with Matt Malero, there's one sport that he is partial to, so check that out if you haven't heard it yet. The third Matt Malero interview I did right here on the podcast feed. Let's talk about all this decoration that Carl has put up. Let's start on the ground, all right? On the ground floor here, it looks like he painted the Aqua Teen's green carpet to resemble like a football field. He has like the lines there on the ground. We have a banner that says Cleveland on it, a banner that says New York. I like there's a grill in the house, and we see there's like soot all over the ground. It looks like a charcoal grill. And there's also either soot or just like burn marks on the wall by the grill, because it's inside. You're not supposed to use this inside, obviously, but apparently somebody has, because there are residual marks from it. Kind of funny, because it's not that far from the gas leak, so I think if you tried to light this, it would explode the house. But regardless, we have a New York Giants blow-up chair with like a footrest on it, also a cooler with some brewskis in it there. There's also some more banners on the wall that you would see to your left as you enter the Aqua Teen's house. It looks like it says Washington, one says State. The last one there says Buffalo. We also, on the opposite wall there, we have like a score chart that Carl has set up. And then the last thing on the wall is we have a cutout of a football player. His jersey is 21. He is playing for the Giants. I'm looking up here. I guess Tiki Barber was player 21 from 1997 to 2006. I think that's who this is supposed to be, although I will quote Markula in saying nobody cares about sports, so I don't know if that's wrong or not. The last piece here I'm going to talk about is the foam finger we see on the ground, and we have seen this foam finger before, this showing up in Season 2, Episode 3's Super Bowl. 8 minutes in, Carl has this foam finger on his hand at a certain point in that episode. So fun to see this older Aqua Teen prop showing back up here in Season 5. So this is our first time seeing a lot of this sports swag set up here in the Aqua Teen's house. But if you're an Aqua Teen Ultra Mega fan, and that is not a legend, that is the truth, because you could have seen this, a lot of this set decoration in 2007, because in the fall of 2007, even though Carl here is almost in a way getting his own spin-off show, he had his own spin-off web series in 2007 called I'm Pissed. And this was later rebranded as Carl's Stone Cold Lock of the Century of the Week. And it was an online sports show that they did as Carl that really ran from 2007 to 2016. This ran for a long time. And they would have, again, they were shorts, but they'd have, Dave as Carl, then they'd animate Carl. I was just talking about whatever games were going on or just whatever else they wanted to talk about. But it was very sports-centric, and you can see this on the Volume 6 DVD, the DVD set that these episodes are on, and they had some of the shorts there on that DVD. So I could go and see that, yes, indeed, we could see these set pieces back in 2007, and they are reusing them here. So Carl's done trying to sell the house. He's over it. I'm surprised he doesn't take all of his stuff back. Maybe he does later. We don't see him do it there, though, because he leaves the house. In our next shot, it is now nighttime, and we are in Carl's house. He's on the computer looking at porn. He's apparently naked. We don't see anything, but we do see he's not wearing a shirt. I want to say this is our first time seeing Carl on the computer. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't recall him using a computer in any of the other previous episodes. So we have Carl on the computer here. He's trying to watch porn, but there's some noise from next door that's kind of hampering his vibe.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you are naughty. Yes, you are a cheerleader, aren't you? An enormous 300-pound cheerleader. Not too many cheerleaders missing teeth, but, so I'll go with the fantasy. Yeah, get the mascot involved, that's right. The guy in the bear outfit. I'm so desensitized. It's gotta be just completely bananas to get me off. Hey!
Oh, baby. Your credit card limit has reached its climax.
No! What the?
The thing that sticks out to me here is, what website is Carl using in 2008 that he has to pay by the minute, like, to see porn on? There had to have been free porn sites then, right? I'm guessing there were, so I don't understand what he's up to, but maybe because, as he said, he's so desensitized. He wasn't desensitized to those dead bodies, but he is desensitized to internet pornography. Maybe he has to be on some sort of specialty site, even though it doesn't sound to be of the highest caliber, because he's doubting the fantasies. Like, I don't know how many cheerleaders are missing teeth, but all right. I guess we could talk about Season 3, Episode 5's E-Dork, because in that one, we had Carl watching some bestiality porn, so it makes sense that he's turned on to some extreme stuff. But yes, unfortunately, he has to pay more to see more. I guess he's done with his dad's porno tapes. from season 4, episode 7's Global Grilling. But that music is really bugging him, that music that's happening outside. So in a very quick instance of somebody getting instantly dressed, because Carl goes straight to opening the door and now he has his clothes on, he's going to see what all this hubbub is. He's going to go next door to the Aqua Teen's house, and that hubbub is some hubba, because let me tell you, a hottie, she's going to open the door, but she's not your average hottie, okay? She's some sort of ethereal being who's next door. She opens the door, and she's kind of floating there. She's wearing this gown, this white flowing gown, and her hair is flowing as well. And you'll hear, she has a very distinct way of speaking.
Hey! I'm trying to get erotic here! Keep it down! Hey! Open up in there! I just came by to say, welcome to your high beams! I came out wrong. I meant to say boobs. Who are you?
I'm your fantasy Carl.
Really?
There is no credit card required to sleep with us.
Whoa! Coming on strong. Us? Who's us?
Me and my sisters.
All right, so we're going to go inside here and meet the sisters. I do want to mention, we see from the windows, and then when the doors open, that the lights are off. But in our next clip here, we're going to go inside, and the lights are on, so that's kind of funny. I forgot to mention, though, I think the reason they had the lights off is because this woman is glowing, too, and it's easier to portray that with the lights off. So this woman, I should say she has this kind of reddish brown hair. I'm really not sure what the term for this is. I'm not a hair scientist, all right? In that clip, we do get this kind of standard Aqua Teen-ism, which is the characters always know Carl's name. He never introduced himself to her, but right away, she's like, I'm your fantasy, Carl. She knows his name, and that's always the case in Aqua Teen. You very rarely have people introduce themselves in the show, or at least have any of the main characters introduce themselves. The other characters just always know who they are. But we just had one of the Sirens there. Let's talk about her first, and then we'll go on to our next clip where we meet the other two. That Siren was voiced by Neko Case. Now, if you're a patron, we've talked a little bit about Neko because she did show up on the Aqua Teen Christmas album, Have Yourself a Meaty Little Christmas. She sings on there, so we've mentioned her. But to get into Neko Case, she is in the band The New Pornographers, who maybe you haven't heard of them, but they are a pretty big indie rock band. So that is Neko singing with The New Pornographers, that song, Letter from an Occupant, from their 2000 album, Mass Romantic. But they just released an album last year, I think? So they're still rocking and rolling. Neko also goes on to voice the character Cheyenne Cinnamon in Cheyenne Cinnamon and the Fantabulous Unicorn of Sugartown Candy Fudge. I don't think we've talked about that show on the podcast before, but that is a pilot that Dave Willis did with Matt Harrigan, who we talked about in the last episode. I'm sure we'll cover that on the Patreon at some point in the future. But Neko, she's entering the Aqua Teen world at this point, and Dave Willis had a little bit to say about her when I spoke with him last time.
I'm not sure how I met Neko, although I think a mutual friend had said she was a fan, and so that's how I think John Worster might have connected us.
So Dave explaining that he thinks it was John Worster who connected them. John Worster, he's a musician as well, but he also does a show with Tom Sharpling, a.k.a. Willie Nelson, over in Season 2, Episode 15's The Shaving. And Tom Sharpling, somebody we've mentioned throughout the podcast, who Dave is friends with. Dave went on to tell me, though, that Neko was great to work with, which, I would assume since he invited her back on for the Aqua Teen album and for the Cheyenne Cinnamon pilot later. But yes, that is Neko Case playing one of these sirens. Let's jump back into our episode here and meet the other two sirens. So we're going to go inside the Aqua Teen's house now. And I want to say all of Carl's football swag is gone. So maybe he did take it back at some point. And also, I guess it goes to show that Markula didn't need Carl to get this house either sold or rented. I'm not really sure here what's going on because now there's some new occupants. So let's meet them here. We're going to meet, we find out that this siren, her name is Chrysanthemum, which is a flower. In Greek mythology, this flower is seen as a protector against evil spirits. So maybe that plays with this. So her name is Chrysanthemum. The other siren's name is the BJ Queen. I mean, we'll hear it in the episode, but she looks similar to Chrysanthemum, except for one of like her shoulders, like in the robe she's wearing, is kind of pulled down, maybe a little seductively, and she has darker hair. And then the third siren is Major League Baseballer John Kruk. John is not floating, but his hair is flowing, which is funny because he has a mullet. So like the back of the mullet is floating all ethereally, and he's also glowing as well. So he's looking very good here. It's a great reveal. It's way better than my explanation. Let's jump in and listen to it.
I am Chrysanthemum. This is the BJ Queen. This is John Kruk.
What's up, man?
Kruk from the Phillies?
Yeah, man. That's me.
Dude, I hit you with a battery in 89, you remember? D-Cell?
Yeah, I remember you. Yeah, I still got the scar. And I still use that battery. Thanks, man.
I gotta tell you, I spent about 3 nights in the clink because of that. But it was so worth it to see you just drop to your knees in anguish.
Carl here being kind of mean. He's like he did something horrible. He threw a battery at this guy and made him drop. And he's like bragging about it to the guy. It's very strange, but Carl taken off guard. It's John Kruk from the Phillies here. Let's hear what Dave has to say about working with John Kruk on this one.
And then the John Kruk was just trying to think in terms of who is the exact opposite of a siren that would lead you to crash upon the rocks. Or who would be Carl's version of a siren?
Yes.
And I knew Scott Van Pelt at ESPN, and we got him to do the video game, and he gave me a tour and introduced me to John Kruk. And John Kruk I think he had testicular cancer. He had one of his testicles removed. But I want to say in this big room at ESPN, in this huge corporate situation, he was just yelling across like one of these sort of wide open workplaces, but he was yelling across and gripping his groin and saying something like, "I got you low hanging here right now." And I'm like, wow. So they don't have an HR department here at ESPN. Yeah, it was pretty neat, but Kruk was great. He was awesome.
So Dave explaining to us that Scott Van Pelt, who is an announcer at ESPN, he introduced Dave to John Kruk, and it was because of that connection that they eventually asked John to do this episode. And the reason they got John Kruk was because they wanted to find someone who was maybe like the opposite of a siren. And I should say, I should have said this sooner, because I did mention what chrysanthemum meant to the ancient Greeks. A siren is from Greek mythology. Basically, the idea is a beautiful woman who would sing this beautiful song that would lure captains and their ships to drive their ship over to meet with the siren, but it would cause them to crash their boat and die. So the sirens were trying to kill them with their beautiful song. Like, you may be familiar with the term siren song, to where you think it's going to be this great thing, but really they're out to get you. So a fun play on that, having John Kruk be one of these. And the reveal here visually is like, we see Chrysanthemum, and we go over to the BJ Queen, which again, I love the duality of the two names here between Chrysanthemum and the BJ Queen. It's probably the best joke of the episode. And then from there, we pan over to, and this is John Kruk. And it's just him. He's like, "Hey, Carl." So some fun stuff here. I do have to say, to me, last season, in season 4, we had an episode with Bart Oates, who was a footballer. So to already have this kind of sports star-centric episode, to me, is maybe a little similar as Bart Oates, but we'll see how that goes going forward here. Again, Carl, very aggressive in a way to John Kruk. He's excited to see him, but also I guess he's assaulted him before. But I do like the way they play with that because John's like, oh, I still use that battery to this day. And he holds up a flashlight. He's like, thanks, man. You'll notice, too, I like the way that Chrysanthemum, and we will hear the BJ Queen, their voices are auto-tuned and have reverb applied to them, but then John Kruk's voice is just dry and normal. So you may be wondering what John Kruk is doing here. That's what Carl's wondering. Let's find out what's going on.
So what are you doing here, man? Hanging out with these hooers. I mean, no disrespect, seriously.
I'm a siren now.
Yeah. So what's that? Like a team or something? Like a what?
No,
what's
man.
That?
It's like I'm their sister, and we sing songs to people.
Oh, like a band, yeah.
No, that's not really it.
Sing for him, John Kruk.
Oh, not right now. It's not a good time for me to sing.
Yes, you must.
Do I really have to sing?
Go on, man, sing. She said you sing. Go do it.
Sing. That's all these girls do. Thank God, they're freaking crazy.
Do dirty deeds done dirt cheap.
Sing for him, John Kruk.
La 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 la.
Oh, you suck.
John Kruk is not a good singer. Mask his hideous voice with more volume.
What the?
I like how they're just insulting him as he's there, but he's not really trying to sing, okay? I feel like if he tried, he could do better than la 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 la. Although it does sound like they're putting some auto-tune on his voice when he does the la la's, which is good, but I like how he's just like, yeah, I'm their sister now. Then Carl's like, oh, you guys are like a band? No, it's not like that. I do notice visually that both of the female sirens, they don't have toes, but then John Kruk has toes. I have to imagine that was a decision when drawing these characters. Because again, the women are supposed to be these ethereal things, while John Kruk is just supposed to be the human, the man, John Kruk. But again, he is glowing, and only the back part of his mullet is flowing, which is really great visually. We did hear Kelly Hogan there as the BJ Queen. Kelly is a singer, and she sang in Neko Case's backing band for Neko's solo work. But Kelly, very established in her own right with her own solo work and singing in a bunch of bands. Let's hear what Dave has to say about Kelly Hogan.
Yeah, Kelly Hogan was is sort of a local Atlanta legend, wonderful voice, sung in a lot of bands that I would go see, but I didn't really meet her until she was working, singing backup for Neko.
So it was through Neko that Dave met Kelly, even though Kelly, she's from Atlanta. She, like Dave said, she's like this Atlanta legend singing in all sorts of bands around town there, and then these other bigger acts as well. So he knew of her, he had seen her live, but it wasn't until meeting Neko that he finally met Kelly.
Then your voices come to haunt me, so I like to keep myself in pain. Myself in pain.
Holy cow, what a voice. That is Kelly Hogan with her song, I Like to Keep Myself in Pain. Of course, links to all these songs down in the description to this podcast episode. And Kelly also did a fantastic NPR Tiny Desk concert that I'll be linking as well. So that's a little bit about Kelly Hogan. So jumping back in here, all right, we've met the three sirens. One of them not as good of a singer as the other two. Let's jump back in and see what John Kruk has to say about them mocking him and treating him poorly.
You kidnap me, you torture me with your sick games, and I gotta sit on here with a clamp on my thing. I mean, what the hell do you guys want from me?
Ho, 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 ho! Go back. You guys you do sex games here?
Yeah, I guess. Hey, what do you guys think if this guy could take my place for a bit? You know, I'd love to go see my kids.
Yeah, I could totally take his place here.
No, John Kruk!
Yeah, no, man. Go see your family.
Boy, down!
You know, maybe you should just go on home. Don't worry about what we do over here. It's not even painful anymore.
You sure now? I could totally get into this.
No, I'll just...
That's them pillow fighting.
Catch up with you later.
All right. I'm next door if you need anything. Certainly, if you need another piece of meat to fit inside your sex sandwich.
Carl, please.
And I don't even mind that you're a dude.
Just go.
You are a potential Hall of Famer.
Dude, just go.
300 career batting average.
He said go.
I could totally have sex next to you.
Dude, go.
Well, all right. Yeah, okay. But, I totally get naked with you. Oh, this door.
So I love hearing Kelly and Neko harmonizing because that's what they're known for together as a duo. So I like that Matt and Dave played with that here, but of course it's ran through autotune. It is very reverbed out, and it's just ridiculous. Lots of mixed messages here in this episode because if you'll recall, when Carl first knocked on the door, when Chrysanthemum opened it, she said, "I am your fantasy. There is no credit card required to sleep with us," right? But then it seems like they don't want to do anything with Carl. And then also at first John Kruk is like, "Oh yeah, you guys, you should let Carl swap out with me." And then very quickly John Kruk is just like, "Oh no, Carl, you got to get out of here." Now maybe he's protecting Carl. Maybe he thinks if he goes against the other two Sirens that things will get worse for him. We'll learn more about that as the episode goes on. I mean, we heard a little bit about it here. He's got a clamp on his thing, apparently, on his ding-dong. All sorts of crazy stuff is going on here. Something is not quite right. It isn't quite the paradise that Carl is painting it out to be. And speaking of Carl, I do want to take a step back to our previous clip that I played before the last one, because Carl enters the room saying,
"So what are you doing here, man? Hanging out with these hooers?"
I like the Sirens there not responding to that, but we've heard Carl say that exact word in a previous episode back in Season 4, Episode 7's Global Grilling.
Hey, Carl, how you like your tube steak?
I like to park it in some hooer. Yeah!
And I love there, too, that nobody really responds to his joke, so he's 0 for 2 of telling this dumb joke. I'm not familiar with it. I haven't heard that pronunciation of horror before. But I like the way Carl says it. It really stands out to me, so that's why I wanted to mention the global grilling thing. But, all right, back to our previous clip here. I did notice, I don't want to call it an animation error, but it is a noticeable mistake, I guess. And that is the BJ Queen. We can see on her hand, there's like a thick line coming off of it that at a certain point she moves her hand and then the line isn't there anymore. So I don't know what happened here, if there was something left on the layer, I don't know, some sort of mistake was made. So here is the most microscopic of visual errors for you that I noticed while watching this one. So Carl's getting pushed out. He's not really happy about it. So he's going to take matters into his own hands. He's going to drill a hole in the side of the Aqua Teen's house so that he can spy on them until Markula shows up.
69 when you eat a junk lunch at the same time.
Quiet.
Giving and getting it on. I'm giving and getting and giving. And wait, did someone just hear? It sounded like a power tool. Yeah, it was like a drill or something.
Shh.
69.
There we go. All right. It's the magic hour. All right, now, just reach up and grab him.
Carl.
Markula, what are you... what's going on, man?
All right, so not a whole lot happening in that clip. Just we see Carl in a pretty depraved state. He's crouching outside the Aqua Teen's house on the right-hand side if you're looking directly at the front of the house, drilling a hole through the wall. And to me, this is maybe a little bit of a callback to the previous episode, Robots Everywhere, where there were a bunch of holes in the wall in Frylock's room on the other side of the house so that Carl could spy on whoever is changing there from the comfort of his own house. Although in Robots Everywhere, the holes, they weren't cleanly drilled like this hole is. They were more like, I don't know, look like bullet holes almost in that episode. But yeah, Carl, no stranger to putting holes in the Aqua Teen's house this season. This is a good opportunity for us to talk about the song, though, that we hear the Sirens singing. This song is called 69. Hey, all right. And it was performed by Neko and Kelly, and it was written by both of them as well as Dallas Good. Dallas was in the band The Sadies, and he was a collaborator and friend of Neko Case. Unfortunately, Dallas passed away 2 years ago, but those are the 3 credited writers on this one. And in the episode here, it's just used as background noise. We never hear just the song, and they don't really address it, really. But on the Volume 6 DVD, again, the DVD that this episode is on, as well as this entire season, it's used as some menu music, so I was able to record it off of that to play for you right now.
69 when you eat a junk lunch at the same time that you get your junk munched, and giving and getting and giving and getting it on. I'm giving and getting and giving and getting it on.
So there you go. Some amazing harmonizing between Neko and Kelly, but then they're singing about 69ing, right? The song title is apt in this case. You're giving and getting it on. So that is the song they're playing throughout this episode, but they affect it a lot more. While on the DVD menu music, we get just like a raw, dry take of it, which is nice to hear it before they play around with the audio of it. So, all right, jumping back into our episode, Carl, he drilled a hole, but then Markula stopped him before Carl could see anything. He was peeping through that hole there. And I like when he's like, quiet, quiet, as he's drilling, like that's going to affect the drill somehow. Carl's got some splaining to do.
What's going on, man?
I would ask you the same thing.
Me, I'm drilling a hole. Running some wires through here for some, speakers. That's right. Putting them right here in the bushes.
Good call. I want this side yard to reek of sound. What is going on in there?
I don't know neither. You go check it out.
I will.
Carl slapping his head.
It's all fine.
Fine? What do you mean?
See for yourself.
I think this part of the episode kind of dragging a little bit, not a whole lot happening. They're doing it for a reason. For example, like Markula goes inside, so we're just kind of sitting there for a bit, waiting for him to come back outside, and now we're going to progress on. So they're not just like throwing stretches of silence at us or moments without anything happening for no reason, because it is kind of leading to something, but at the same time, I don't know, it doesn't make for certainly the most compelling discussion topics on the podcast here. But I like Markula saying that he wants the yard to reek of sound, Carl giving a very silly excuse for why he's drilling. Not a whole lot to say, so what do you say we go inside and see what's going on, what these sirens are up to? And the reveal here, unintentionally funny, because the way Carl is going to see this is he's going to walk around front to the Aqua Teen's house, and the left window shade will be open, so he'll be able to see this. And I went back and checked. The way the shots were framed previously, back when Carl was doing the drilling, we couldn't see the state of that window. So I would have assumed the curtains were closed, but now they're randomly open. It doesn't really make sense. I don't know. At this point, though, the window is open. Again, it's Aqua Teen, so it doesn't really matter. Carl can see what's going on here, and it is not a pretty sight. So we see John Kruk. He's chained by his arms to the ceiling and his feet to the floor, and then basically his top half, the skin is just pulled down like he's wearing a suit, essentially. So the skin is pulled down. We see all of his musculature, and it's gross because there's like this kind of yellowy stuff connecting the skin to the muscle. Very disgusting. And not only is that going on, but he's being tortured by the Sirens. The BJ Queen is stabbing him with a harpoon, and Chrysanthemum is pouring salt right on his open muscle there. It's some messed up stuff.
Oh, no. John Kruk.
Ow.
Baseball's lost a legend.
Ow. 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 Oh.
See? It's fine. They're going to be good tenants.
You people stay far away from me!
So they're going to be good tenants, paying their $20,000 a month to Markula. He'll let them torture this guy. In fact, Markula's all about it. He likes what's going on here. To go to my recent interview with Matt Malero, at least I think it was my most recent one with him, he mentioned this being one of his favorite, like, deaths or whatever, something. He mentioned this episode in Aqua Teen, the fact that this was exceptionally painful, and he thought it was funny that, that this is going on with John Kruk. I want to say, the funny thing to the John Kruk visual here of his skin pulled down and he's like just muscles is that he still has his mullet. Like that's still on his head. That didn't come off with the skin. Let's move on to our next scene because that's going to address what we just saw in the previous one. So we're going to have Carl sleeping on his couch and he's holding a rifle. He's like curled up with a rifle there. And the doorbell's going to ring. He's going to accidentally fire it. He's going to answer the doorbell. It's going to be John Kruk, and he looks to be fine, like how he did previously. And then John Kruk will show Carl, hey, look, it's just like, yeah, I could just put the zipper down. Oh, I actually like when they do all that stuff to me. It's pretty good. Carl's going to get convinced here now that he wants to join them again. Again, this episode is so back and forth on this, but yes, now John Kruk is convincing Carl to join them. And in this clip, we're going to get a visual shot of Chrysanthemum laying on 2 Wicked, and then BJ Queen is spraying her with a hose. So we'll cut to that too. You'll hear that.
Friggin'.
Hey, what's up, man? Hey, did you see my paper?
I saw you last night.
Oh, yeah, with the girls.
Yeah, with the girls.
In the living room.
In the living room, yeah.
Yeah. They're pretty hot, huh? Hey, check this out, man. All this skin comes off with a zipper. You see?
And the harpoons?
Oh, this harpoon hole? Surgically made for the illusion. Dude, it's so hot. The biggest sexual organ is your brain. You know what I mean?
No.
Honestly, don't knock it until you've tried it.
Well, I'm presently unattached. I mean, you know. How I go about doing that?
You can go dance for them, see what they say. I mean, what the hell, give it a shot.
Well, I don't dance. Unless I'm totally wasted.
All right, then let's get wasted.
So Carl here, he's freaked out by all of this, but then when he sees Chrysanthemum laying on his car getting sprayed with water, he kind of starts to change his mind. He's so easily convinced here. When we see Chrysanthemum on the car, her breasts are pixelated out because behind that we could see, like, you know, you would see her nipples there because they're the robes that they're wearing when wet, I guess, are basically see-through. And if you look at the very last frame of that, the pixelated bar goes away and you could see her nipple there very, very, very quickly. And it's nothing scandalous. It's just like a darker pink dot. It's nothing like detailed or anything like that. But I had to wonder, like, did they intentionally make it so you could see her nipple if you went frame by frame? I have to think so. I don't know if anybody would admit to that, so I didn't ask any of the guys. But I don't know. I have to wonder because I feel like you could easily just have censored that out. But yes, you can see that darker pink dot if your perverted heart so desires. And speaking of perverted heart, you know, we have Carl here getting convinced and wrapped up in this. Now, before I read The Hellbound Heart, which is like the short story that Hellraiser was based off of, and I don't have a copy with me now, so I can't check, but I swear it said something along the lines of, like, kind of here, like there's stuff with, like, doing shit to your nerves because that's, like, the ultimate pleasure, and then drawing the lines between pleasure and pain and all these things in the book. So I'm kind of thinking that this is somewhat of a Hellraiser reference through this, because Hellraiser did touch on these kinds of topics, and Matt Malero himself worked on the 3rd Hellraiser movie. So I really think that's where they're coming from, because Matt Malero is a huge Hellraiser fan. So there is somewhat of a connection here with the Hellraiser franchise, and it's not our first in Aqua Teen. Go back and check out the cubing if you want to know more. So Carl, he wants to buy into the Sirens here. He wants to be a part of their group again. And John Kruk informed him the best way to do that is to dance. Carl said the only way to dance is to get wasted. That's exactly what he's going to do. We're going to get a great dancing and singing sequence here from Carl. Let's see how the Sirens like it.
Alive! That's from the live album.
We do not like it.
You know, that kind of means they don't like it, Carl.
Oh, come on! What I gotta do here?
So Carl instantly here looking a lot more sober after he's done dancing and singing. But first of all, great performance by Dave Willis. He is doing The Ocean by Led Zeppelin. After performing that, though, and doing, hold on, he does a really great dance. So you have to see this visual of Carl doing this drunken dance while singing this song here. Well, he's not really singing it; he's just mouthing the instruments. But Carl then goes, I think he says "alive," and then he says that's from the live album. So I went through listening to a couple Led Zeppelin live albums, watching some famous performances. I didn't spot anywhere where Robert Plant said that. So I don't know if Dave Willis was just making this up in the booth or if he was referencing something that I didn't see. But what I did see was, god damn it, I saw Robert Plant's dick fucking through his pants looking right at me. That guy wore the tightest pants in the history of mankind. Like, at this time in 2008, when Sirens came out, skinny jeans were popular. Those skinny jeans had nothing on what Robert Plant was wearing. I feel assaulted watching those videos, him dancing around with that goddamn dick staring at me. But hey, I didn't find where he said alive. Don't know what Carl's referencing here, but a great little sequence. Unfortunately, the Sirens, they're not buying it. They don't like it. Which to me is kind of BS because Carl was way more passionate there than John Kruk was when he tried to sing his song. Oh, and to loop back to the Led Zeppelin really quickly, of course, earlier in the episode, I didn't mention this, but Carl mentions Dirty Deeds Done Cheap by AC/DC. So, 2 classic rock references in this episode of Aqua Teen. How about that? The Sirens, they don't like classic rock, I guess. They didn't like Carl's song and dance. So John Kruk, he's gonna pretend to help Carl out. He's gonna hand a scalpel to Carl and instruct him to cut his nipples off. That will surely get the affection of the Sirens. Surely this is gonna work.
Take this knife, slice off your nipples, and feed them to the sisters, like grapes.
All right. No, I'm not doing that.
Oh, come on, buddy. You know you're drunk.
Yeah, I know. It's a good thing, too. Otherwise, I would totally feel this.
Do you have them? All right, now take them and throw them in the sewer.
I thought that you said
You thought what? That you're stupid? You're so stupid. That's for hitting me with a battery at Shea, you asshole.
So, they don't want the nipples?
Dude, who would want them? Dogs don't even want them, okay?
All right, John Kruk. Take it easy, man. I'll catch up with you later.
Even though Carl doesn't seem drunk anymore after he did his dance, he still is, because he goes through with this. We actually see there's 8 beer cans on the ground. I guess that's what it takes to get Carl messed up. Seems like a reasonable amount. Or does it? I don't know. I don't drink that much, so I don't really know. But that would get me fucked up, okay? That's all I'll say. 8 beers, I'm easily cutting my nipples off. 9 beers, I'll probably do it if you don't even tell me to, all right? So I don't blame Carl here. A fun kind of twist where we have John Kruk getting revenge on Carl, having him cut his nipples off for no real reason. He's like, yeah, this is revenge for you throwing that fucking battery at me, dude. So kind of funny here to see John Kruk get some revenge. Carl's standing there. He's got blood coming out of his, where his nipples used to be at this point. He's just standing there holding them with the bloody knife in his hand. They say knife, but to me it looks like a scalpel, like something a doctor might use during your yearly checkup or something. I don't know. Something I noticed while watching through this episode, though, is every time we're inside the Aqua Teen's house, Master Shake's green chair is not there. But then every time we have an outside shot and we can see through the window, as long as the Sirens aren't like actively there doing something, the chair is back. So like in that previous clip, you could see the chair through the window, even though we haven't seen it actually inside their house this episode while we were inside of it, of course. So moving on here, I don't feel like there's a whole lot to say about that clip. Carl cut his nipples off. It's some violence. I do like the twist there of John Kruk knew it was just to be an asshole to the guy. But again, interesting that he was seemingly trying to... I'll get to this later, okay? Because this episode is so back and forth on a lot of things. Let's move on here. We're going to be at the front of Carl's house at his door. The doorbell's going to ring. Carl opens the door. First of all, he has a hangover because he's holding like an ice pack to his head. He's also wearing his wife-beater shirt, and there's some red splotches where his nipples should be. And we see ringing the door, it's Markula. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, of course, voiced by Matt Malero, Aqua Teen co-creator. Playing Markula here. Markula, he found Carl's nipples.
I found these nipples in the sewers. Is anyone you know missing any nipples? There's no way they could be sewed back on. I mean, too much time has passed by now.
I don't know nobody, so maybe you keep walking.
Well, I guess I'll keep looking.
Yeah, keep looking.
Maybe place an ad in the paper. It would be a big color ad. It would say, nipples found.
Nipples found. A big color ad in the paper. Markula's kind of sweet trying to find who these belong to. We get a really cool close-up shot here of Carl's nipples, and that's not the cool part, although they are pretty detailed and hairy, is that we get a close-up shot of Markula's hand, and he has these like long, Talon-esque fingernails. It's a really cool shot that it isn't just his normal hand close-up. Like, we can see it's a different drawing of the normal Markula character. Kind of reminds me of something like Ren and Stimpy or SpongeBob, when they would do a close-up shot that's way more detailed than something normally is. That's what they do here on Markula's hand with these nipples. So, a cool touch. I have to ask the question, okay, because previously, Carl cut his nipples off, but John Kruk said, look, that's not going to help you get with the Sirens. They don't want to be with you. So that scene ended with Carl just holding his nipples. But then Markula swings around here saying he found them in the sewer. So that means that Carl still threw his nipples down the sewer like he was instructed to. I don't know. Look, he was drunk. Maybe that's why he went through with it, although it seemed pretty clear that that wasn't going to do anything. So I have to wonder why Carl still went through with it rather than go to the hospital to get them reattached. Maybe it was out of shame. I don't know. But the other topic I want to get to is I love that Markula was just rooting around the sewers. Like, I guess he was just hanging out down there. He's like, hey, I found these. Better go ask around up top. See if anybody lost these. But a lot of dimensions to this scene right here of what's going on. But Carl wants nothing to do with it. Again, he's got a hangover. He's probably embarrassed he did this. He won't admit that these are his nipples. But it's all right, okay? Don't feel sad for the nipples, because in our next and final clip, there's going to be somebody who is proud of these nipples. It's going to be Markula. So he's standing there holding them. He's going to lick them and then, like, stick them to his chest and say, finally, he's got nipples of his own, except he already has nipples. We can see them in the shot. So now he's got 4 of them. Hey, 4 is better than 2. And I'm not the only one that thinks that, because the Sirens are going to be there, and they're going to like what they see.
Finally, nipples of my own.
They're so beautiful.
Don't you think I know that?
That's great. Couldn't be happier for you. I have an idea. How about if I go see my wife and kids?
I have a better idea. It's called Pizza for Everyone. Pizza Party. Who has money?
And that is it. That's Sirens, the end of the episode. We then cut to our credits, which, like I said at the beginning of our deep dive here, the credits they're really pristine looking. It's the same credits as the earlier seasons, just higher resolution, like they rescanned them, which I guess they couldn't do for the intro. But I like that randomly in the episode, Markula's voice has reverb on it. Like when he first calls Carl out, because Carl's drilling through the Aqua Teen's house, he says, Carl, and his voice kind of reverberates. And then we had that same thing here when he says pizza party. It just kind of comes and goes. And Markula there sounding a lot like any corporate employer. Like I said earlier, I work at Target, and when they're like, oh shit, morale's at an all-time low, people want pay raises. Fuck, what do we do? Oh, I know what we do.
Pizza party.
Problem solved there. Markula, he's on to something. I like, too, when he says pizza party, his hands kind of shake all festively. But then a good ending when he's like, so who has money? I mean, I guess he's still waiting on his 20 grand a month check from the 3 Sirens here. We also get John Kruk wanting to see his wife and kids again, which I'll hold on to this, okay? But to me, it's like, well, then why didn't he try and get replaced with Carl? Like, he gave up so quickly on that. But all right, before I give you my thoughts here on Sirens, that is the end of our episode. let's go over to the thoughts that were had the night that it came out, or at least the week it came out, over on the Toon Zone forum. As always, a link to this forum thread in the description to this podcast episode. Let's go see what people were saying about it when this one was hot off the presses. So, of course, back in Robots Everywhere, we had lots of complaints, but we also had some people who liked it. And our first comment on the Robots Everywhere was by Moto Pete, and he said, wow, that is the worst episode ever. That's what Moto Pete said about Robots Everywhere. Well, Moto Pete is making the thread this week for Sirens, and his comment is, WTF, where is Frylock, Meatwad, and Master Shake? So Moto Pete, he doesn't like it. JBanks97 comes in saying, wow, this week on the Carl show, Carl gets another new neighbor. This time, the neighbors weren't funny. Their songs were funny at first, then quickly became annoying. Carl gets to meet another famous sports star, and Markula, I guess, gets added to the credits this season. I have to think Aqua Teen Hunger Force are now going to be gone at least half a season. Even though I didn't really like this episode, I have to admire the sheer gall it takes to screw with this show this much. Those who wanted talking fast food products aren't going to be happy. I'm interested to see where this goes. Jay Banks usually a voice of reason in these comments, and I think this was pretty reasonable. They're not like lashing out against this episode, just saying, look, I really didn't like this, but I'm interested to see what they're doing with it. And we do get a few comments to that effect here in terms of, oh, they're trying to get Carl a spin-off show. They're trying to make Carl his own show. And I don't think that's what was happening. Of course, back in Robots Everywhere, the podcast episode, we had Matt and Dave telling us that, no, they just wanted to try something new, and that was their intention. They didn't reference trying to do a spin-off show, a pilot. And like I said earlier in this podcast, back at the end of 2007, Carl started getting his own kind of web series anyways. So they were doing stuff with Carl as it was. I don't think that was the intention here, although I absolutely do not blame people in 2008 for thinking that that was the case, because it is a pretty reasonable assumption since this episode, unlike Robots Everywhere, had zero Aqua Teen in it. Jedi Alchemist has a different take. They come in saying, frankly, I love it. I think they are building up to something big. Besides, they'll be back, I believe, February 3rd, so I think this will be solved shortly. So that's the thing, is that there were people in these forum threads, even in Robots Everywhere, who knew the Aqua Teens are coming back because you could see future episode descriptions at this point to where the Aqua Teens came back. So there are some people in the know who know that they're coming back, but if you're just a casual viewer, but also invested enough to come to a forum immediately afterwards to discuss it, you might not know these things. Rabbi and Rose says, ugh, not again. No Aqua Teens, no finish episode. It's like, I won't even dedicate 11 minutes of my life to watching this if the Aqua Teens aren't in it. The show's on, but I'm gonna look away because the Aqua Teens aren't in it. User Delarian comes in with a really interesting take. Delarian says, oh, come on. I think this was what was happening with Carl while the Aqua Teens were in Egypt at the beginning of their movie. So they're referring to, at the beginning of Colon Movie Film for Theaters, we have, it turns out Shake's telling this story, but we see the Aqua Teens in Egypt and all this crazy stuff goes on. I covered that over on the Patreon, so I don't want to get into it here. But what they're saying is, while the Aqua Teens were there doing that, this could be what Carl was up to while the Aqua Teens were away. Now, we learned that's not the case, because we will see the Aqua Teens in the next one, but that is a very interesting take. I like where Delarian's mind is going on that. So let me just read you one last comment here. User BTV really liked this one. They said, I like what they're doing here for these episodes. It's obvious they have a bigger budget now because Carl's moving more than 2 frames, and there's other places and positions they've been in. I really like that, especially when Carl's dancing or when he was curled up on the couch with a gun. The problem is there aren't a whole lot of people who would get this. The fact that they've been going on a whole new type of setup and ignoring the main characters all is a joke in itself. Most people would just chalk it up to ignorance of the creators or they just wouldn't get it to begin with. I can't imagine how most of you call yourselves Adult Swim fans when you don't even understand the humor. This stuff's gold. I love it. It's just so aware of itself that it can pretty much get away with anything now. A+. So, a very optimistic take on this. There's a lot more in this thread of people complaining about it. Of course, fun to touch on, but since we know how this resolves, not worth digging too deep into, but some very interesting takes here, and it's fun, for us who we know what happens. We are the future tellers as we look back on the past. We know how this resolves, but it's fun to watch people try and work through it and figure it out. So on to my thoughts here. I didn't like Sirens in 2008. I don't like Sirens now. I don't think this is a particularly interesting episode. I don't think it's egregiously bad. It's not my least favorite Aqua Teen episode. For example, Munawana last season I dislike a lot more than this one. But there's just not a whole lot happening here. And it doesn't do much for me. I mean, you could probably tell during a lot of the clips I didn't laugh a whole lot, at least especially compared to Robots Everywhere, where I can get behind an Aqua Teen-less episode. But here, the premise was pretty good, although again with somebody in the Toon Zone thread said oh, he meets another sports star. Again, like I said it in this podcast, to me a little similar to the Bart Oates episode, which I thought was way better than this. So for me, if I can directly compare this to a different episode, and that episode was better, it's going to make me not really care about this one, because I'll just go watch Bart Oates if I want a Carl-centric episode with him hanging out with an ethereal kind of sports star that he admires, right? I thought Bart Oates was a lot better, and the thing is, right, with Bart Oates, we did have Aqua Teens there, so they could cut to the Aqua Teens to kind of advance the Carl portions of the episodes. Once the Carl thing kind of ran its course for a couple minutes, they'd cut to the Aqua Teens a tiny bit, then go back to Carl. While here, it's just Carl, and they can't do that, so it's focused on Carl the whole time, and we don't really have anything to cut to. Sure, we get some time cuts, but I don't know. To me, if we could talk about Robots Everywhere, which is something that is easily comparable to this one, Robots Everywhere, I went through at the end of that one and talked about the different segments of the episode, how the episode was doing all sorts of different things that were cut up into a few minute chunks. With Sirens, it's more of just one long kind of story that they're telling, and because of that, they're not really just jumping between jokes as much. Of course, there are jokes peppered in, but it's a lot slower of a burn here. I don't feel like the payoff is that great. It is pretty funny to get Carl to cut his nipples off for no real reason, but this is Aqua Teen, right? They get Carl to do stuff like that all the time, so that in itself to me isn't that satisfactory of an ending. And just the important thing really is just the jokes. I don't feel like this episode had as many jokes as Robots Everywhere or as previous Aqua Teen episodes. Something I kept hinting at was how back and forth this episode is, and it kind of bugged me because at first John Kruk tries to get Carl to join them, but then he keeps saying, oh no, don't join us. But then it seems like John Kruk wants to leave, so you would think he should be trying to get Carl to join them. And then Carl's back and forth on if he wants to join them or not. The episode just doesn't commit to anything. So yeah, to me I don't know, I just didn't really like that aspect of it a whole lot. So yeah, Sirens for me, not super great, not one I see going back to, but I do want to talk about the positives of it. And that is, it is advancing the storyline that they're doing with these 3 episodes in a very incredibly subtle way. Now, we saw a little bit more heavy-handedly in Robots Everywhere that in that episode, the point was Carl saw, oh my gosh, there are neighbors that are much more annoying than the Aqua Teens, because the robots were way more annoying than Aqua Teens are. In this episode, Carl is seeing that there are way more demented, fucked up neighbors than the Aqua Teens. Specifically, when he first sees John Kruk getting abused in that room, it really seemed to shock Carl to his core. He was really distraught by that, and then he slept with the shotgun. To me, that was kind of powerful to see Carl that worried about something, that messed up by seeing something. Now, the episode does go on where he's not as worried about that. Granted, he is drunk and he wants to get laid, so that kind of dissipates towards the end of the episode, but we are seeing here that there are other neighbors that not only can abuse Carl in a similar way to the Aqua Teens, but they're much more just messed up than the Aqua Teens are. So this episode, I think, is advancing that a little bit and showing Carl that the Aqua Teens aren't the worst neighbors ever. I do want to say, I think John Kruk was maybe a little justified in getting Carl to do that, since Carl whipped a battery at his fucking head and then was bragging about it to him in the episode. So I don't feel too bad for Carl here. So that is something I think the episode was doing well. There are some good jokes here. There are some moments I like. Again, to me, my favorite part is the names Chrysanthemum, and then the BJ Queen is so funny. And then also to have John Kruk. Like, that reveal, I think, is gold in that segment of the episode. I like the bits of Markula here. I mentioned in Robots Everywhere that Markula wasn't really a standout character to me there. In this episode, I think he does a lot, and it proves like they needed another character for these episodes for Carl to bounce off of. And that was Markula, and I loved Markula in these moments. I think here, he really had some standout moments in this episode, so Markula did a lot here. The last thing is, I want to talk about how there are no Aqua Teens here. A very risky move, and in fact, when I was talking to Dave Willis very briefly about this one, this is what Dave had to say.
I mean, like I said, I think we tried to come up with a larger idea, and who knows if that would have ever worked. I don't even remember. So were the Aqua Teens not in Sirens? Surely they were in Sirens.
So that's Dave talking about just this overarching concept for this early, like, beginning of the season. And then he's like, surely the Aqua Teens were in Sirens, right? Like, he didn't realize when I told him that, yeah, the Aqua Teens aren't in some of these episodes, and it was really just Sirens that we don't see or hear from them. In his mind, he was like, well, surely we had the Aqua Teens in all the episodes, right? But they didn't here. And look, I'm about to drop a hot take on you, all right? I hope this doesn't change your opinion of me. I would have liked to have seen the Aqua Teens here. And I don't mean that as in I don't enjoy an episode without the Aqua Teens, because I truly enjoyed Robots Everywhere. I just feel like maybe if they sped some of this episode up and then gave us a little glimpse of Aqua Teen, it would have really helped this one with pacing issues, and then it just would have been nice to see the boys and remember that, oh, this is Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and they're building towards something. It's not the end of the world to me, but I feel like the biggest thing would have helped with some of the pacing issues. Having said that, I don't know exactly what in this episode they should have cut, because it does feel cohesive to me. So yeah, I don't know. Look, I'm not an expert here. All I can do is tell you my rating for this episode. I think I gotta give this one 3 sewer-bound nipples out of 5. That's 2 of mine, and I'm hoping for 1 of yours on this one. Slice it off, because we're giving it to this episode. I don't hate this episode, but I did not really grow to love it like I did Robots Everywhere. I did appreciate it more. Again, I do think like the storytelling and pacing here makes sense. It's solid. I understand why they did what they did, but this one to me, lacking jokes, pacing's a little bit slow. I think we're seeing not only why Carl needs the Aqua Teens, but why we need them too in this story, because like I outlined with Bart Oates, when they can cut to the Aqua Teens then back to Carl, even if the storylines are pretty separate, it works out well there. But also, I like seeing the Aqua Teens and Carl all interact together. But yeah, for what it is, not really digging Sirens here. But you know what? I'm excited to get to the next episode, Couples Skate, because I really don't remember that one much at all. I'm sure I've seen it all the way through once, but I couldn't really tell you what happens in it outside of like the most obvious plot points. So, excited to get to Couples Skate because we will see the Aqua Teens there. Excited to see how this wraps up. But until then, hey, thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for spending your time with me, talking teens, getting through the early season 5 here. I want to thank Dave Willis for giving us a little bit of insight on Sirens. You can find Dave on Instagram at Dave Willis Shake Table. Link to that in the description to this podcast episode. And you know, I'm thanking our Moonmasters, our patrons who support the show over at patreon.com/dancingisforbidden. I love doing this podcast, and without people supporting it, I wouldn't be able to. Well, I could, but you'd be getting episodes like once a year, so I don't know. I don't know how good that would be. So hey, if you like this podcast and would like it to continue, please consider signing up over there at patreon.com/dancingisforbidden. Otherwise, just telling a friend about the show, posting about the show, it helps out a lot too. So I gotta thank my man Garrick for signing up to the Patreon back on Christmas Eve, giving me an early Christmas present. I also got to thank the one and only, our Highlander Nick.
There can be only one!
There's only one character in this episode whose nipples we did not see. Just like there's only one Nick, that character would be the BJ Queen. Otherwise, we saw everyone else's nipples, including John Kruk's when he took off his skin suit there. This was a very nipple-centric episode. And I also gotta shout out our number one in the Hood G tier patrons. They got nipples too. I gotta shout them out. Sean, Ian, Captain Buford, Robinson, Jason, Carl, Lesheraton69, Empower706, Swimwiki, Lurvinator, Thorin the Grumpy Dwarf, Garrick, Jonathan, Calixto, Tom, Luz, UK no Tamashi, and Nick F. You guys can sing Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap any day of the week. I'll see you tentatively, I got some family stuff going on, so we'll see, on September 2nd, where we'll be diving into Couple Skate. Till then, keep it cool, take it easy, bye-bye.
Dancing is forbidden. Dancing is forbidden.
Villains, quote unquote, of course. We have Neko Case as Chrysanthemum. Neko Case as Neko Case as Chrysanthemum. God damn it. Chrysanthemum. Neko Case as Chrysanthemum. Fuck. Neko Case as God damn it, dude. Can I use AI for this? Can I just fucking clone my voice and type this in? All right. We have Neko Case as